I want to just start by saying I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done over the last year. We came into office with 4 things we needed to do urgently: reduce the unsustainable net migration, reduce the increased levels of migrant exploitation, set the conditions for economic growth, and improve our skills mix to a higher skills mix. And just quickly going through those: net migration, when we came in, 136,700 in the year ending October 23, it's now 38,776. Migrant exploitation, I'm particularly proud of. Between November 22 and December 23, 2,377 applications for migrant exploitation visas, 169 a month on average. From our changes we instigated in April, which was the English language test and having relevant skills, we can see that we've only had 59 applications from those changes, which is an average of just under 6 a month, which is really good to see. We'll keep tracking that very closely. Visa processing, again, very proud of this, and this is crucial for economic growth. And when we came in November 2023, the 3 gateways, when you added them all up, the accreditation, job check and visa, 81 days. Businesses cannot wait 81 days to get people in the country. I'm really proud to announce that at the moment it's 32 days for a new application, which is better than the 10-10-20 promised by the previous government. Extraordinarily proud of that. All while making sure we were managing risk and the border integrity as well. Huge shout out to INZ for that work. They've done an amazing job. I just want to mention Nat Mackay from Auckland and Jenny Melville, who's been doing an incredible job here. And then the very last thing I just wanted to say was the skills mix. Between January and December 2023, over half of all the migrants coming in on a work visa were 4 to 5 low skill workers. That's skill level 4 and 5. We are now at 65%, 1 and 2, skill level 1 and 2, and 35%. About a third are low skill workers, which is much more comparable to 2017 when we left office. So those were the urgent concerns, and I'm really proud of the work that the team have done.
Fantastic.
Open for questions.
Thank you, Minister. Our first question we've got with Ricardo, and then we've got Phil and then Carl.
Thank you, Minister. Is the fact that, would you consider migrant exploitation to have gotten better or worse under your watch? And are you using just how many people are accessing the migrant exploitation visa as a KPI for that? Or what else are you considering when making those statements?
Sure. Well, I know you've talked about this earlier, and it is always hard to tell because we don't have, people in everyone's business. So what we can do is track the numbers of migrant exploitation visas. And since our changes in April, which were, of course, bringing in the English language test, and we know that was crucial for people to be able to protect themselves, being able to speak English, not only for that, but also for health and safety. But the big one was having relevant experience. So we are getting people in who they're coming for a painting job, they've been a painter, not a fisherman or something else. And those 2 things alone have had a huge impact, because since then, the new applications that we've seen of migrant exploitation visas since the changes have dropped dramatically. And I think that's one of the only things that we can really look at. And I'm sure that officials have told you what the other things that they look at. But for me, the KPIs at the moment, I'm looking at the number of migrant exploitation visas issued.
And is it not the case, though, that part of the contributing reasons for the huge decline in migrant exploitation protection visas is that you have also tightened access to it, the duration of the visa? How can you not say that disincentivizes
because the drop started in April when we made the drop started in April when we made those changes to English language and the 2 years of relevant experience. We didn't announce those tightening of having 6 months, taking away the additional 6 months of the migrant exploitation visa until when did we do that? November, October? Yeah. So we already saw huge drops of migrant exploitation visas since, and it's tracked exactly the same. So it was definitely in my opinion, it was our changes around English language and having the relevant skills.
Finally, on migrant exploitation, you just mentioned earlier that it's really hard to measure whether migrant exploitation is getting better or worse. We do know that there's a huge delay when it comes to investigations in relationship to exploitation, those getting concluded, and very few, if any, prosecutions at all. How else are you going to be measuring whether migrant exploitation is getting better under your watch?
Well, firstly, what you said that I said in the first part of your question, because I didn't say that at all. But the other thing that we are doing, and I know you talked about this earlier in committee, was around the prosecutions. One of the changes we made last year was to allow infringement notices to be issued instead, because quite often what's happening doesn't meet the bar for prosecutions, or we can't collect enough evidence for prosecutions. It can be very difficult. So last year we changed the law so that infringement notices can be issued, and I think we've issued around 300 of those, and we'll continue to do so.
And we did discuss
Have I got
that
that right?
earlier.
300?
100. I'll double check.
Oh, sorry, I may have that incorrect.
But
Maybe
it's
100, but I was told 300 earlier.
$300,000 that we've got in from them.
Okay, so we can clarify that for you.
And we did have good coverage of that earlier.
It is 100.
So we'll move on to our next primary question, which is Phil.
Actually, it's a sub.
Oh, all right.
Are you satisfied that 4 prosecutions in the last year is adequate when there were 3,925 tips or reports of migrant exploitation?
Look, as I said earlier, a lot of those don't meet the bar. They're much lower level, don't meet the bar for prosecution, or we can't collect enough evidence, which is why we brought in the new law to be able to.
But there's a case in the media almost every week of exploitation going on that is damaging to New Zealand's reputation and puts migrant workers in a really invidious situation. And the best that can be done is 4 prosecutions in a year under your watch. Doesn't that say something's wrong with the system?
So I can
Yes,
maybe just add a couple of points. So, I mean, migrant exploitation, just because it is referred doesn't mean that it exists. That's one element. So there's a filtering that kind of occurs. And if people have been found to be in exploitative situations, we, as we explained earlier in committee, do have a compliance focus on that work. We have a range of levers. So I actually think the suspension for the employer having access is stronger, and it is easier or quicker for us to apply than this, in particular in those cases where we struggle to get evidence or corroborative evidence. And some of that is what are the incentives of some people to come forward because they are fearful in the circumstances that they are in. And so we do have to try and use the variety of levers that we have.
It's also just worthy of note that the migrant exploitation that we're seeing currently, when we look at when they applied for their visa, was pre our government, pre our changes. So we're still seeing the tail of that, and I always said we're going to continue to see the tail. But migrant exploitation since the changes, has dramatically dropped in the figures that we're seeing.
But we're talking about 12 months, which are your responsibility to do
that's
compliance.
why I'm making, yes, I understand that when that's been answered, but I just think it was worthy of pointing out that it is still the tail from the previous government.
So the most significant thing that you've done in the area is actually you've cut in half the amount of time that a migrant has access to an open work visa if they find themselves in a exploitation situation. How does that actually help the situation of the exploited migrant worker?
Well, the first thing to say is that this is a transitional visa. It is not an open work visa to stay here for a year. It is a visa to quickly and urgently get out of the situation that you are in and seek other employment. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, 6 months is a reasonable amount of time for anyone to find employment. And if you cannot find employment, then it is time to leave. Now, I don't believe that offering them another 6 months when they are potentially without work in a very vulnerable situation, probably I would say more open to migrant exploitation than they were before. So I don't think the 6 months, additional 6 months has had any impact. And I would say the other thing I'd say is, a year of an open work visa is an awesome sell for those people, those, despicable people who are getting people to New Zealand to exploit them from overseas. Look, come here, apply for MEPV, and you get a whole year worth of an open work visa. So there's a number of things that we took into account when we took that down to 6 months, but I don't think it's perfectly reasonable to find a job in 6 months.
Thank you. And just noting, we do obviously have limited time, so this is a supplementary.
Yeah, just a very brief supplementary.
Thanks.
Yeah. But do you accept that in that 6 months is not just a matter of people exiting the exploitative environment and then immediately being in a place where they can actually find work, but rather for many people and many workers, including those that have been in the news, The situations involve needing therapy, counseling, relocation, constant harassment and bullying from the previous workplace environment that they were in. So do you not think it's inaccurate to portray those 6 months as simply just people leaving the workplace and then being in a position to enter new employment,
6 months.
but rather needing additional support that most people who leave employment don't actually require if they were not being exploited?
6 months is plenty of time. For
What research and evidence are you using to back that statement?
I can throw to my officials.
Or is it just vibes? Like, have you just made that statement?
Okay.
Or what research are you using?
Sure, but it's
Yeah.
also thoughts and feelings and vibes to say that they're all getting counselling as well. So,
Yeah.
Did you talk to the
migrant-
exploited
Okay.
migrants?
exploited migrants that I've spoken to are not in counselling. They're
I
looking for
don't think
work.
you've been talking
Cool.
to many.
Okay.
Well, in opposition, I spoke to many under the previous
And you're trying their
governments.
backs.
Okay, thank you. For the sake of Hansard, we don't need muttering under the breath. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the next primary question from Carl Bates, and then we'll move on from there afterwards. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for the work that you've been doing. What is your work program in terms of focusing on how we're unlocking productivity and economic growth in New Zealand?
Well, look, thank you. And as you know, we've got a real focus on economic growth. And I've already talked about the things that we've done in terms of overhauling the AEWV, and we may well make more changes if we need to, and bringing down those processing times. That was key. As I said, 81 days or 82 days is not okay. So that's been a phenomenal amount of work that we've done. But I'd also say we know that we've got more work to do. We've got more work to do in the residency space. The previous government has made it almost impossible to get residence for really good, skilled people. And we are starting that work program right now because we really want to make sure that we can keep those people in the country if they're really good, skilled workers. We've got, and I can't talk about the details, so don't ask me about the investor visa, which we have been working on as well, and a number of other things that we've got on our work program. But the most important thing for us at the moment is making sure that companies have access quickly to skilled workers. And then the next big thing is that we need them, we want them, if they're good skilled workers, to have a pathway to residence, which many of them currently don't have.
Oh, thank you.
We have a supplementary question on this one from Ricardo.
Thank you. On the theme of economic growth, I know you recently made an announcement, but I was wondering the period we're reviewing, whether you know of people on visitor visas who were already working remotely while being here.
Well, that's something that it's very difficult to track, right? I'm sure that there are not immigration officials who are in hotel rooms looking at people if they're checking work emails or not. So look, it was something that needed to be cleared up. Because it's actually okay. If you're here on a holiday with your family, if you check a work email, make a call to the office, check in, look, that's totally fine. And so now we have clarified that that's okay. But more importantly, we are targeting those highly skilled IT workers to start with, to say to them, if you want to come here and work remotely for your company, it might be your own company or a company that has employed you, you are welcome to come here and spend your tourist dollars while you're working remotely.
And does it not send a bit of a mixed message if we've got one minister saying that people should be working on site, not from home, as much as possible, and you're encouraging people to actually work remotely, to come here? Is that not sending mixed messages to the workforce both domestically and internationally as a government?
No.
So just going back to a supplementary from Carl, and then we've got a supplementary from Grant and supplementary from Phil. So carry on. Carl.
Thanks, Chair. Earlier in the day, we spent some time, Minister, speaking about this visa and some of the international perceptions and discussion that it's generated. Interested in your view, so the digital nomad visa and some of the opportunity that it's created, talking about New Zealand as a destination internationally. Interested in your view on the value of to use a word that's been used, vibes that it creates and getting New Zealand in the international conversation. Is that part of the outcome you're looking for from the visa?
Oh, look, absolutely. We have been missing out on a whole market of people that other countries are taking advantage of, which we have not been able to do so. And it was great yesterday and the day before to see the digital nomad headlines for New Zealand on the BBC and in the New York Times. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that Brett O'Reilly was on, I think, RNZ saying, look, Some people from LA who've lost their homes in those devastating fires are making inquiries about coming here while they're rebuilding their homes. So there is a huge opportunity, but we will be targeting our marketing to Southeast Asia and America in the first instance, and also targeting highly skilled IT professionals, because we'd love them to come here and work remotely, but actually if they stayed, that would be great too.
Supplementary from Grant.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in that whole economic growth space, we heard from your officials earlier they've been working closely with various sectors to improve the accredited employment work visa processes, particularly in the dairy sector. So what sort of feedback you've had from the farming sector in that space?
Look, it's been really positive. I think Fed Farmers called us the alternative centre, something that I saw, which was nice.
Yeah.
Hopefully not in girth, but in presence. So they were really pleased. And I worked very closely with Fed Farmers on this. They had a number of concerns that we have addressed. And my words to them were, we want you to expand your business, farmers to expand their businesses, to export more, to invest more, and I have to get the settings right. And what are the roadblocks? So we did some small changes last year around carving to make sure we had workers coming in. We gave them some exemptions, and I think the recent changes to the AWV have been very warmly welcomed.
Thank you.
Great. Supplementary, Phil.
Actually, if we could move to a new primary, is that all right? We've only got 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, if you're happy to get rid of that one, no worries. Okay, Ricardo, next primary.
Well, this one is for the Associate Minister. What work have you done at all to explore additional resources or changes in policy to ensure that former refugees are able to be reunited with the family members in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 category?
I think at this point that we recognise the Tier 1 remains the priority, because that is about providing the family members for those that have no family in the country. So that will remain that 600 threshold has been met, and we will continue to prioritise Tier 1. In terms of Tier 2 category, there is no current work being done about how we change that setting, because as I've said before to this committee, the challenge is that we ensure that those 1,500 that we bring into the country settle well, and that we prioritise the support for them, and that we have the best experience. We recognise the motivation to do more, but we are operating within the constraint of what we have. That Tier 2 category has been there for a long time, and as you're aware, the last time we opened it up was only for a very short space of time in 2017, and it's just the process to complete those applications is long and arduous. I mean, 3 years, I think, is the threshold for Tier 1. It will be even longer for Tier 2. So at the moment, our priority continues to be about meeting our 1,500 quota, and the 600 for the Tier 1 tends to be taken up by the Tier 1.
If no new work has been happening or even explored, are you not condemning family members of former refugees to potentially wait, in some cases a lifetime, to be reunited with their family members, potentially actually seeing those family members age out or, in worst case scenario, die before they have a chance to be reunited?
And that's the reality. There is a huge issue of displaced people around the world, and there is tragedies all over the place.
And you're not doing anything new about it?
Well, we are doing exactly what we're doing, which is we have an outstanding refugee program to bring 1,500 refugees into this country and settle well, and we have an exemplary program, and that's what we're doing to assist and support this issue. And I agree, having people sitting in this program as a false hope, should be looked at. But at this point, there is no program of work in that space, and we have prioritised what we've always prioritised, and that hasn't changed under this government.
Right. Supplementary, Phil?
But by refusing to do anything about the backlog that allows people to wait for up to 10 years if they're in Tier 2, aren't you completely undermining the intent of the policy, which is to enhance the settlement of refugees who come to New Zealand? Because it just creates cynicism and despair
Yeah, and as the member knows, that this has been a challenging issue. It has been a challenging issue from when you held this position and this responsibility. We know that this is a priority, but that is why Tier 1 is prioritised, because that is connecting people who have no family in this country. And that was why Tier 1 remains the priority. Tier 2 exists. It is a policy position that we have challenges in. But we have a limited capacity, and we have prioritised the increase in the quota, which we have for a second year in a row met the 1,500, and we're on track to do that again. And we will prioritise Tier 1 to those family members who have no family in this country.
Yeah. I've got your primary next.
Okay. Minister Stanford, why did you not consult with Pacific Labor sending countries before you took away the 10% premium on the minimum wage for RSE workers and lifted the freeze on accommodation costs for RSE workers? Wouldn't that have been the right thing to do?
Look, that was an issue that we had between us and Foreign Affairs. And my view at the time was that had been consulted on, and it hadn't. And we already have made, we have said to the High Commissioners and those countries that we've apologised for that, and it won't happen again.
So it was a diplomatic mess up
It
by Foreign Affairs?
It was not in my portfolio area, so I can't comment.
Did you get any feedback subsequently about how those countries felt about conditions and income being taken away from their RSE workers?
They were more concerned about the fact that they hadn't had consultation, which I took on board and we apologised for and said it won't happen again. That was their main concern, and I agree with them.
And when you say it won't happen again, are you actually exploring and working with other agencies to reverse that when it comes to the wage requirements?
No.
Well, what's the point of apologising if there's no redress or change?
Because it's been through Cabinet and the decision's been made, and we're not going to change it.
So it seems like a hollow apology then.
It was an apology that we didn't consult, and a promise that in future we will consult on any changes.
Okay, I have next primary Pam sheet, then Phil, if I'm getting that right.
Yep.
Minister, about the parent long-term visa, visitor's visa. We were told before that the work on that will start sometime from mid this year, and work will finalize by end of this year. Health cost is something that you have mentioned before. So I would like to know from you, what instructions have you given to officials to ensure that the health cost is not unreasonable, because it will be no point if the health cost is such that people are not able to actually access that visa.
Look, we don't control health insurance costs, unfortunately. That will be what it will be. But we haven't started work on the visa right at this red hot moment in time. We will be. It's on our work program this year, as you've mentioned. But those discussions will happen as we go through the policy.
So are you saying that there will be a health insurance component rather than government putting a cost on each?
We haven't made that decision yet.
Phil.
Associate Minister Costello. So the Asylum Support Seekers Trust is the only organisation who provides welfare support to asylum seekers who are waiting for their claims to be dealt with, and their funding runs out in the middle of this year. Will you renew their funding so they can continue to provide support for extremely vulnerable people, including asylum seekers who are found to be homeless, without any means to support themselves and living in dire straits?
Yeah, as you're aware, there's been a huge amount of work in this space because of the massive increase in the number of claims that are being dealt with. I am pleased with the amount of work, and full credit to the team in terms of what they've been doing in this space. In terms of the specifics of the contract, I'd have to defer to officials. The asylum
I asked them and they referred it to you in the last session.
I think I said we were in active discussions with ministers around this.
Yeah, sorry, yes. Yeah, so at this point, there's no decisions, but there is a huge amount of work being focused in this space, because we are fully cognizant of the high number of people that we're dealing with. Whether the existing contract remains as it is, and it's just a continuation of the contract, or whether there's a new contract, those are discussions that we need to have.
Okay. With the community organisation Refugee settlement program, can you guarantee that if it is extended, after the outcomes evaluation, that it will be in addition to the 1,500 a year quota and not part of the quota, which would effectively be a privatisation of the existing commitment.
Yeah, and I'm very keen to see that the program is in addition. I think it's an important pathway that would resolve a number of issues that we have in this space about those additional opportunities. And I think it's an opportunity to look at skill and other pathways into this country. There has been no intention or expectation that it would be part of the quota, that it was always seen, and the pilot was run as additional to the existing program.
Okay, thank you. And if I may ask one more in that area. The Victoria Casey review on the detention of asylum seekers, there are 3 outstanding policy recommendations and 1 legislative one. What plans do you have to advance and implement those remaining recommendations?
The recommendations from the Casey ruling, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'd refer to the specific.
Yeah, so it's primarily it was work that was done around processes, procedures and detention of asylum claims and some touching onto deportation.
You able to answer any?
As I said earlier, the policy work, we have been continuing the policy work and working with ministers on that, but it's not at a point yet where that's resolved into a solution, but that is underway.
Can I ask if you're committed at a political level to implementing all those recommendations?
No decisions have been made.
Great. Can I say just, Ricardo, is that a supplementary or new primary?
The primary.
Okay, well,
I'll keep it brief. Yeah.
thanks.
So I know Parmjit was asking on the, assuming as in your work on the long-term visitor visa for parents, but I wanted to ask about the parent resident visa. Are you comfortable around the time it takes for someone put in an expression of interest for that to be pulled out and for someone to get a parent residency visa when the feedback from people around the community is that people are concerned about the parents literally aging out and not being able to bring them over here?
But we're doing our very best, and we've had huge increases in its speed of processing of across many visa types, and we're continuing that work. And some of the work we've done in AWV, the work visa, the processing of that, we will continue to move across other visa processing areas to get those same efficiencies. But look, we've had, if you look at our student, our work, our visitor, we've improved all of them across the board, and we're just continuing to do that.
I hear that, but specifically on the parent residency visa, have you seen or received estimates around how long it will take to go over all the expressions of interest and approve or decline and evaluate all those?
It's not something I've asked for, but I see in my weekly reports how long it takes us to process visas. So I see the numbers, and we are improving across a huge amount of visas, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you. On that note, in closing, just to acknowledge the final point you made, the hearing that we had this morning, just noting the real change just in terms of placement of staff and the way that they work across products, I think was noted. And so thank you for that. Thank you both for your time. Very much appreciate you coming in and answering some of those questions we couldn't get answers on earlier, and do appreciate it. And thank you to officials who have stayed on for the full day. It's been very, thank you.
Thank you.